Welcome to High Tea with Joy. Our guest today is the illustrious Wendy Goodman from The Curb and New York Magazine, also author and journalist. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us today. I'm blessed to have you.
I am blessed to be here. I'm so honored and I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you. We're about to brew it, pour it, and spill it, all things design and related to a good, elegant life. Thank you, Wendy. So tell us, how did you get your career started?
Well, believe it or not, by kind of mistake. I wanted to be an actor. I studied acting. I went to NYU School of the Arts. I studied with Stella Adler. And I got out of school, and thankfully I got a degree in English and writing, which, I don't know. But I started auditioning, and I thought, I don't have the personality for this. I don't have the drive an actor has to have, because I was interested in all sorts of things. Long story short, I needed a job, so luckily a friend happened to call and said, there's a job opening at Harper's Bazaar magazine where she was working. And so I got an interview with Carrie Donovan, who was then the fashion director, and she said to me, what makes you think you can do a job in fashion when you've been studying acting? I said, well, I kind of think it's the same thing. She said, oh, that's so funny. She said, I think you'll work out. So she said, we've got a young editor here. She's just come from England. She's really new. Her name is Anna Wintour. So Anna, I was her assistant at Harper's Bazaar, and it was my first paying job because I had had jobs before that. I was doing styling, but for Interview magazine, but I wasn't getting paid. So it was my first paying job. So as you can imagine, I learned quite a bit.
Wow,
Quite a lot.
So how did that sort of set the tone for everything that led up to what you're doing now, that experience with Anna?
It was amazing. Being at Harper's Bazaar in those days in a fashion magazine was incredible. It was pre-internet, which I don't think a lot of young listeners can even imagine what that world was. But it was a lot of waiting at phone booths with some change in your hand to see if you could make a call to let someone know you're going to be late for an appointment. I think the thing is, I then proceeded to go to the New York Times Sunday magazine where Carrie Donovan went there, and she asked me to write and produce fashion stories, and I thought, I don't know how to do that. So I said that to her, and she said, just do it. So I thought, okay. And that has been my motto ever since. Just do it. Even if you don't know what you're doing, just go full force and learn and ask questions. And I mean, again, I was in the fashion world, so it wasn't like they were asking me to drive a rocket ship or something. So I felt like I can figure this out. But I think it was a very good early lesson in my career, is just to embrace the opportunity and go for it.
That sounds like magic. Do you think that someone could have a career like yours with that sort of drive today, with the industry being what it is now?
It's such a good question, because the industry back then was almost, when you look at how sort of innocent it was, fashion designers were very small businesses. They were starting with their sewers and they were, much like fashion designers that you were discussing before, have to figure things out today. However, the landscape is so different. The social media, I think in a way it could be easier to launch some kind of authentic business online on Instagram. Of course, there's lots of businesses on Instagram, but I think back in the day when I started my career, it was a much simpler process. It was one-to-one with someone, you talk to them, and I think that one-to-one of talking and asking questions together, listening to people, that counted for a lot, and I don't know that happens that much. I don't know what the process is of people getting jobs now. I think a lot of it is done on the Zoom, because of course it had to be during the pandemic, but it's just such a different landscape. But I think, the thing I think is still true, if you have the energy and the passion will fuel your energy, and you're willing to do anything, even if it's not your job description, you really will be, you'll give yourself an opportunity, and you will be kind of let into whatever arena you're interested in being in.
Do you think then it's also very important to have a mentor, someone who takes you under their tutelage, or you know, to help you just develop that talent along the way?
I'm so glad you brought that up, because mentorship is so important. I have been blessed to have the most incredible mentors and bosses, from Anna, Carrie Donovan, Ed Kozner at New York Magazine, and then Adam Moss at New York Magazine, now today David Haskell. Diana Vreeland I knew as a kid. I mean, I have had an incredibly blessed and lucky career mentor-wise, and it helps. It's the difference of day and night.
I think it's so important to have incredible writers in fashion and design. And one writer as well, I'm sure you know who he is. I saw him the other day on television, and I was so happy to see him again. Hal Rubinstein.
Oh, he's fantastic.
I was delighted to see him again. I remember him when he was with Egg magazine, and you know, Mirabella, Grace Mirabella, and I'm old enough to see the impact these writers had on the stories that were being told in fashion. And with the Swans now and all the socialites, to me, they were socialites when I would read the words from these fashion icons of writing and journalism, which I consider you to be obviously as well. I mean, your words just jumped off the page, even if you didn't actually see the runway or see the object. You had such a strong vision of it because of your writing skills.
Well, I think that the thing about writing is what I do is I just keep asking questions. I mean, the interview process for me is really important. And, you know, sort of studying up on whoever it is that I'm going to be talking to or doing the story on. And someone like Hal is so, you know, he has a magnificence about him. He's got a great authority. And I think, again, that comes from really knowing your craft and really doing the deep dive into researching what's happening in the culture now. How is fashion reflecting what is happening in the culture now? Who are the designers who are doing really new ideas versus the designers that keep restyling ideas? All of that is valid, but it's interesting to hear the differences in what people are doing, and Hal is really astute, and he knows that like nobody else. So it's exciting to see him again.
Yeah, I think so too. It's extraordinary, and his book is about fashion and television, so the impact of Sex and the City and some other shows, Dynasty and all those sorts of things. How do you, what's your take on how to create an elegant life?
Well, that is a really interesting and complicated question to answer, because I remember back in the day when I was styling celebrities at one point for, I was a freelance stylist for Interview and for other magazines. And I remember one trip in particular going out to California, and that was back in the day, again, pre-internet. I came with like 100 trunks from 7th Avenue, and I was sort of waiting in my room to see, who am I styling today? One person was Michael Jackson.
Get out of here.
Who was just this beautiful kid who came with his father, or maybe a brother, I can't remember. But he was with someone else, just one person. And he was so adorable and sweet. Of course, he was dressed beautifully. I didn't need to do anything. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that the glamour that people see on a page in a fashion magazine or in a shelter magazine, yes, there is true glamour out there, but I think it's not what you think. In other words, when I would do celebrities in their homes, and I would see the amount of people that hover around them, the personal manager, the business manager, the PR person, their agent, and I thought, that's really a very intense life. I think if people saw behind the scenes of what I've been exposed to and what the real story is to get that picture, they might say, but is that a glamorous life? It looks glamorous, and there's so many aspects of it that are glamorous, but people work really hard to have that sheen on their life, because as you know better than anybody, to have a beautiful house is not just about how it looks, it's about the upkeep, how you take care of it, how you know how to take care of the linens, the whatever.
Maintenance.
It's maintenance, and that's not something that is, I think, that discussed in the stories in the shelters.
Property managers are the heroes of these residences that celebrities live in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if people knew just the backup team where they're seeing this beautiful veneer, and it is beautiful, it's amazing, but it takes more than a village to actually have that.
Well, you spend a lot of time looking at decorative arts and such. Is there anything in particular that you've got your eye on?
Well, I've moved, so I've moved a year and a half ago from an apartment I had for 27 years, and I had to downsize a lot.
And what was that like, that experience?
A nightmare, a complete and utter nightmare. If I see a brown packing box, I might lose my mind and have to go away.
PTSD.
But you know, I loved that apartment. It was it was my dream apartment. So of course there was that to deal with. But there was also to deal with the amount of books I had, which I couldn't bring to the studio, which I ended up purchasing. First time ever, I'm not a renter. And I think that, believe it or not, I'm obsessed with sectionals right now, because I'm living with the couch that has been in my family forever. It's a Florence Knoll couch. It's really beautiful. It's really elegant. It's like, makes me think of my parents, which I love them.
Nostalgia.
Love them, nostalgia. And I had it recovered. But you know what? A sectional in the shape of the room I have would probably be better. And I think, well, I can't afford to just get rid of my furniture and start over again. But my eyes are open to new ways of living, because I'm in a 1964 building as opposed to a 1854 building.
Different personality.
It's a different personality. It's asking for a different sort of attitude. And I have made those adjustments so far as best I can. And every single iota of space of my walls is filled with art. So I really can't afford spatially or any other way to kind of redo things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, you know, and my work is about going into people's houses, and they're fascinating and beautiful and interesting. So it does make me sometimes come home and go, It just makes it, you know, it makes me ask a lot of questions. Of
well,
myself.
hence your book, May I Come In?
May I Come In?
Tell us about that experience of writing that, and just sort of.
It was really wonderful to write that. It took me a long time to figure out what that book should be, because I thought that since I had the great gift of being able to travel to all those places in the world, see all those homes, report on them, back when magazines were really, really the place that you could see those things. I thought I'd like to do a book that celebrates all the people and all the places that I've been, thanks to people letting me have the honor of visiting them at home. You know, it's like a gift. And a lot of the homes they don't exist anymore.
Right.
But I thought that it would be important to rewrite the stories so that people weren't just getting a story I'd done in a magazine, that I would give them behind the scenes of how that story came about. And also just to sort of figure out what the different chapters would be like. And I decided it's sort of like the personalities of the different people's houses. So homemade and, it's twisting tradition. So the different types of homes that riff on maybe a certain idea.
If you were not living in New York, where would you live?
New York.
New York.
I don't know where else would I
Where
live?
else would I go?
You know,
Where else?
I think that
The rest of the world is just so scary.
well, it's also when you're a born and raised New Yorker,
Yes,
like we are.
yes.
There's a kind of like DNA in our whole being that is used to this kind of love-hate. For me, it's a love-hate.
It
like,
truly is.
I'm in the
Truly
subway
is.
and I'm going, some days I just go, oh, this is my family. These people are my city family. And then other days I go, this is just why the city is so horrible. a lot of the times, because there's a lot of anger now, I think, across the country, but here, because we're all so close together, you feel it very much.
Yeah.
And there's so much that needs helping and correcting. You know, affordable housing is such an issue for, I mean, more than ever, of course. I mean, it's a complicated place to live.
Yeah, I think the disparity in New York has become more prevalent now than ever. Of course, with the political climate, the economy, all of that, and certainly feeling that. I think New York is feeling grittier than ever right now, but that's part of the love too, because I know as much as you travel and when I travel as well, there's no place like home. You still want to get back here. What do you think is an absolute must for entertaining?
I think the absolute must for entertaining is when the host or hostess opens the door, they are just there welcoming you with joy. Even better with the real joy.
Yes, I'll come.
But I think entertaining really is about enjoying the experience of it. You don't have to have a perfectly set table. You don't have to have, like, I know for myself, I have not had a dining table in how many years? And because my apartment is so much smaller, I go, well, could I actually invite people to have dinner? But what I've always done is sort of treat it like, you know, a little bit of a airplane meal, like a big napkin, a very big plate so it's not going to spill. I mean, there are ways of doing things to accommodate what you have. But I think the most important thing is just the spirit of the evening or the lunch or the breakfast, whatever it is. I think that's important.
I think so. I mean, that's in a nutshell. Do you have a favorite beverage you like to serve?
Champagne.
Champagne.
Always.
I can imagine you with a champagne glass and just
champagne.
Can I come in? Can I come in?
Would you come in with a glass of champagne? No, I love champagne. And
I think I spotted you in Milan last year with a glass of champagne, and you had a big smile on your face.
I'm sure you did. But I think, again, you know, a lot of people are not drinking anymore, and a lot of people...
We don't know those people.
We don't know those people. But I think, you know, again, just to think about your guests, you know, what would they like? What do they not like? I mean, I know the question of any food allergies or that was never asked before.
That's just something that popped up in the last 5 years, right? People ask you, like, why are you going to get COVID if I give you an extra tomato? Suddenly everyone asks
and then I did take issue with that, and somebody on Instagram commented, well, you know, people have allergies that could kill them. And I go, well, yes.
So can the Subway.
That's different. If you have a very serious death allergy, of course your host or hostess has to know about that. But it's a little bit different what we're talking about, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Fantasy dinner guest. You're having a dinner party, you're at your dining table or not, you're just sitting in your beautiful sectional with a beautiful large napkin, airplane style. Who are your dinner guests?
Okay, Barack Obama comes to mind because he is, aside from everything, he's adorable, okay, and he's funny, and just to make him smile would be like the happiest thing I could ever do, because he's just delicious.
Yes,
this human being.
Yes, I think you're getting flushed.
Probably thinking it is the lamps, okay, not just me mentioning Obama. There's so many people. I don't know. I haven't entertained in so long. This tells you how long I have.
That's quite fun.
I just am worried I'll never entertain again because of how small my apartment is. But again, I am saying it doesn't matter. It's the spirit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you like to cook?
No.
No.
I mean, I will be honest and say I don't really cook. My entire family is brilliant at cooking, and I don't know why I didn't get that DNA component. But I do like to arrange, and I love to do a setting. I love to prepare, I'm good at arranging. I'm very good at cleaning up. I'm a good sous chef. So I have my qualities in the kitchen. I just don't actually cook.
Got it.
Yeah, I have some things I can do.
Got it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of chat now with, about Truman Capote and the Swans and all of that. Have you watched it?
Oh, finally, I got on Hulu, so now I'm binge watching it, of course. what's interesting to me is that, as always, a drama will incorporate things that are not factual. For instance, I believe the Maisel brothers never did a documentary on the actual ball. They did do, I know that they did do a documentary, or they did do a segment on Truman Capote. There were photographers there, that's how we know those wonderful photographs and people at the ball. And I also am wondering if James Baldwin and Truman Capote actually met, because in my thinking, I wasn't sure they had. I mean, it's an interesting dialogue, I guess, and of course, you know, he would completely like say to Truman Capote, "What are you doing?" Like, you know.
But I was curious about that too, whether that was just sort of like just something to tell the story, or that was a factual piece of information.
I think it was, you know, because these men, and I mean, who was more brilliant than James Baldwin? And I think it was a story moving it along, because also the Swans were a very finite group of women, and some of the characters we're introduced to in the show were not actual swans, but again, they moved the story forward, so poetic license or dramatic license in a show. I saw Philip Seymour Hoffman play Capote.
I remember,
in the film,
he was
and
great.
He was amazing, and I thought, okay, that does it. Nobody else can ever play Capote. I do think, I'm forgetting his name.
Tom Hollander.
Tom Hollander is kind of beyond genius.
Yes.
Because he's developed, I'm not sure if it's totally Capote, but the
voice
character
and
he's
the
developed
character
is so fascinating to watch, and his
delivery,
his self-destruction, his the way that he can manipulate people. It is fascinating.
It really, really is, and I just think it's captivating. I just really think the whole thing is captivating.
I agree.
I'm old enough to, you know, read, you know, all the ladies' names and all this in the bold print, and William Paley. I remember all of that, and Black Rock, CBS, and you know. But I also, when I'm thinking of these characters, I'm also thinking of Elaine's on Second Avenue, and Swifty Lazar, and all of these folks, and just, you know, I would like to see an expansion of that sort of character reference as well.
What really interests me, like I'm very sensitive to the hairstyles in
the falls,
the falls, and the wigs. Now, some of the wigs I think are really good, and some I think are not good at all. But what I would love to see is the behind the scenes again of those women going to Kenneth and getting those hairdos. Because Kenneth, back in the day, designed by Billy Baldwin, it was the hairdressers, the staff, they were in suits and ties doing the ladies' hair. The ladies would, I mean, this was, it could be an all-day event.
Like a hair atelier.
Yeah, it was
couture.
like, you know, pole sandwiches were served on trays for the ladies. And also the way the stations were, because I've seen paintings, you know, illustrations, the ladies were not completely shielded. I mean, they could be in Kenneth's private room, but they were enough shielded so that they could know where each other.
Who else was there?
But they also had their privacy. So I think that's an interesting thing, because I think people liked the company of women or their tribe, so to speak, because it's all about tribal, you know, affiliations, and you know, I still think it's so interesting how someone who completely wanted to be in the inner sanctum destroyed his friendships, and was surprised
the
by
manipulation.
Surprised that they
the
would
heart
turn
of
on
manipulation.
him.
Yeah, I just don't understand that naivete about him. You know, how he could literally just profess some of their most, deepest secrets, and just feel that that should have no impact on his life and his friendship.
So they should know. But that's he's not. I mean, I think he did say that. That is not really honest, because of course he's a writer, and of course, but he should have made it completely clear. It's like, Joy, before you tell me that, understand this.
Right.
I'm going to use it. It could be material. I mean, not that he'd ever say it, but that is what he should have but no, I don't know.
Who do you think some of today's swans are?
Well, I don't think we have any, to tell you the honest truth. I mean, I do think there are incredibly, I mean, I will say this, I think Amy Vine Collins is so incredibly committed and successful in her commitment to being so beautiful, elegant, and well-dressed every minute of her life.
Yeah.
She has the total sort of mindset, I think, of a swan. But Amy, of course, is a very hardworking and brilliant writer. Amy has a family. So she's not a swan in many of the senses. But I think her commitment to fashion and her commitment to keeping herself the best she can be and the discipline, that's very swan-like, I think.
I think Tory Burch could be a swan.
She's very
I like Tory
amazing.
Burch.
Yeah, I don't know her.
She's a Renaissance. I mean, I'm talking about Renaissance swans, you know, not swans in the sense that they're, you know, very standoffish, but someone of, you know, a caliber and presentation who is just really doing it all right now.
I think also Jeannie Greenberg is amazing. I've always admired her beauty and her sense of style. And there she is doing all these amazing shows, having these galleries doing. But again, and also our own photography director, Jodie Kwan, is an amazingly beautiful and utterly stylish person.
I think Erin Lauder also.
Erin Lauder, for sure. Yeah, so I'm wrong. There
It's a
are
contemporary view.
swans that have a different kind of beat, but they are committed to a very elegant presentation.
It's true. Who's your favorite fashion designer? Or what fashion designer do you think has the most impact of your life?
Well, Isaac Mizrahi for sure, because Isaac Mizrahi, Perry Ellis, Michael Kors, these were designers that I saw as a young professional starting out covering the shows. And they were starting their careers and their lines. And going to their shows was so exciting because you just saw fresh, beautiful, exciting clothes. And it's sort of how I always think of it, it stirs, like it for an actor who's getting a costume, it stirs a dream. Like I always think of myself when I'm inspired by fashion to think, I could be my best self if I could only fit into that, if I could only wear that, if I could only be that person who would wear that, I could be a better person. And I think that that's what great fashion does. It's like, oh, that's a possibility. I never knew that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Maybe I could dream that possibility for myself.
Yeah.
You know, it's like very, and then there's just beautiful clothing. Oh, and Jeffrey Bean was a great influence because I remember wearing a Jeffrey Bean dress, and I've never worn couture in my life, but I remember the way that the arms were cut, and it made you really sit up. And it made you couldn't wear that dress like that. You had to wear it like this.
Was there boning in there, or
no,
just the way
it was just cut? It was a very high cut under the arm, and I'd never experienced that before. And I thought, I understand couture. I think from this one piece of this one dress, because the way it's cut does make you behave in a perhaps different way.
Hold your head maybe a little higher.
You know, have a straighter back and just be aware that the line of this is going to look really awful and you're not going to be comfortable if you're slouching. You have to be like carrying yourself for it.
And that's how a designer can change your life. You know, you go out into the world with more confidence just because you've adorned that ensemble.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, back to the Swans, the rooms that they went to, the restaurants they went to, they dressed for that.
Oh, yes.
And I think that today there are these beautiful rooms and people wear, you know, sweatpants and sneakers. And it's just like, you know, that room is waiting for you. That room wants to celebrate you, so you should celebrate it. There's an expectation when you go to a new restaurant or a new anything. And that expectation is kind of watered down when you're seeing the crowd and you're going, oh, well, I mean, it is a special place, and a special place deserves respect, I think, and also, you know, it deserves you making an effort. And I remember Audrey Hepburn in one of her interviews at the end of her life someone said, well, do you think you're beautiful? And she said, I think I always made an effort. And I thought,
that's everything.
This most beautiful, angelic woman who really, I think, was extraordinary. She was so modest, and she just said, I made an effort. In other words, she's saying, I made an effort to be my best self. To, you know, she loved Givenchy. She obviously could wear anything. But I think there's something so to that. Yeah. You know?
It's all in the presentation, saying,
maybe.
I care. Tell us about the other book projects that you've been involved in.
Well, the first book I did, I co-authored it with Hutton Wilkinson. It was about Tony Duquette. It was called Tony Duquette, a kind of catalog raisonné of his incredible life doing jewelry, furniture, interior design, clothing. I mean, Tony did everything. The second book I did was The World of Gloria Vanderbilt. And I really was inspired by her life, because I thought people think of this woman as either a socialite or as, you know, that terrible, the drama of her childhood.
Yes.
And then the suicide, or the death of her son, I should say. And I thought, you know, Gloria Vanderbilt was a Renaissance woman in every way. She was so creative, and she was so like a child of just, the curiosity was endless. So I thought, you know, I'd like to do a book on her, with her. She was still alive when I did it. And call it The World of Gloria Vanderbilt, because she just did so many things so beautifully. And she was a fascinating, magical person. And I got to spend all this time with her, and I wrote the book. And it was an incredible experience for me. Just wonderful.
And the Duquette book, I have seen that book. The images were glorious too. How did you not walk away with all of the jewelry though?
It was, well, I really can't carry that jewelry. It's really big jewelry.
Yeah, yeah.
I do have a ring. I do have a Tony Duquette ring. It's a ring that he made out of a hat pin. And it just caught my eye from like across the room. And so I do have a piece from Tony, I do. Yeah, which is...
What an honor.
It's really a treasure.
An absolute honor. What other piece in the world would you covet?
I'm a pearl. Jewelry. Okay, pearls. I'm a
Mickey Moto?
No, I would go back to, well, I like, okay, here's what I like. Anybody caring to give me them? Kidding. No, I like old mine-cut diamonds, and I like pearls, Baroque weird pearls. I'm wearing some Baroque weird pearls, and these are...
And is that a lucky?
This is a lucky charm that I actually gave a very dear friend of mine for his birthday many years ago, and he gave it back to me for my birthday. Oh. So we're going to be, giving the four-leaf clover back and forth to each other. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. If you love it and you give it to someone else, they love it and they give it back to you.
Yeah,
In the story there is give love and give it back.
Exactly. Well, one of my favorite pieces that I did for New York Magazine was Richard Avedon's home. Oh. And he lived above his studio. And after he died, I asked his son, who is a friend of mine, if I could just record, because he died very suddenly, so his home was left the way he left it. Standing. So anyway, there was a lot of back and forth, but I did get to record his home and actually run that story in New York Magazine. And to me, it really was one of the most important, because the home really showed how he thought and what really he cared about. His books, he had every translation of Proust ever done. Wow. He had, his own photographs, but then photographs from a lot of different photographers and paintings, and it was just his world. So I felt tremendous privilege to be able to tell that story. And I think it's interesting for people to see how someone as amazing as Richard Avedon actually lived. It was creative, it was brilliant, it was fascinating. So I would say that's one of my absolute favorite stories.
Wonderful.
Thank you. That's so much fun to talk
about.
There's a lot to talk about. But you and I share a knowledge of this city and of are businesses that a lot of people don't know.
Right, and it's
Have
so
been-
true. It's just sort of these old, when I hear you speak, I just hear these old references. And in some respect, maybe I was in my teens or 20s, but you take me back to just
that
experiences and
the
things,
city.
and seeing Francesco Scavullo walking around all the time, and just, you know, all these people that these folks now have.
They don't know.
They don't know, and they don't
even
care.
to say Richard Avedon, a lot of viewers will say, "Who is that?"
Oh
Who
my
is that?"
God! And he took one of the best photographs ever of Gloria Swanson, right?
Gloria Vanderbilt.
Gloria
yes.
Vanderbilt,
He
that's what I
took the
meant. Yeah.
picture on the cover.
A
of the
profile,
book.
black and white
Yes,
shot.
yes, it's absolutely
Stunning.
so beautiful.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you so
Wendy.
much. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. I love
It's
you
a
so
joy.
much.
I love you so much.